Book discussion, JM Coetzee, The Pole. This is a book that reminds me of Beckett, actually. It has a very Beckett feel. It's a story about an older pianist who is Polish, hence the name The Pole, and he falls in love with a lady in Barcelona, and there's this interaction between these two characters throughout the book. It's really something between a short story and a novel, so maybe a novelette, if you will. So it's not like a full-fledged novel, and it's certainly more than a short story. So it feels, yeah, it has that feel of almost absurdity, but I wouldn't call it absurdity in a Beckettian way. It's more, it's just sort of toned down. It's toned down of humanity. It's almost like an automaton. It feels like an automaton that is moving forward at a certain rule, set of rules that, if this happens, then that happens, and then this happens, and then that happens. So it has that feel, and therefore I think that's definitely part of Beckett's genius was to bring that through. It was called, maybe the theater of the absurd and things like that back then because it was so inhuman. But Coetzee is one generation after Beckett, or even probably one generation, and therefore it's more acceptable. It just feels in a certain way, uh, accessible. In my opinion, it's not a lovely story where you root for. You don't root for anybody, which is interesting, right? You don't root for anybody. So it's a very uncomfortable narrative. It's anti-biblical. Right? There is no drama. There is nobody you root for or nobody you hate. There's no Cain and Abel. There's no betrayal. There's no blood. None of that stuff. There is. I would say there's really two things. One is humanity, and the other is arts. This is an Adimiron podcast. It's November 18th, 2024. This is Krim Telco. For the day, the fund is up 8%. The market is up about 20 basis points. For the year, we are up 64%. The market is up 24.5%. We're outperforming by 39.5%. The market's still open. These numbers are subject to change. Before I go into the discussion, maybe just a few words about the market in general. I think we still have a post-Trump win euphoria. And I just want to make it clear that we believe the most important task for Trump is to cut the deficit and reduce the deep state, reduce the regulations in the economy. And for that, he's going to have to use an iron fist. So we believe that we're actually going to have to stomach a little bit of a decline in democracy for a while and really rule with a hammer fist. This is going to be a fight of the insiders against the deep state, against Congress, against bureaucracy. And that's a very bloated, very highly entitled bunch. And it's going to be difficult. But we believe that with Musk and Vivek on top of Doge, with Trump as president, and with many other capable people, Gabbard and RFK and the Secretary of Defense, the nominee Pete Hegseth. Then we have Gates, the Attorney General. Like those are the kinds of people that can do this, and that's also why Congress or Senate is against them. But we believe that if Trump can stay strong and really push this through, this can be done, and this is incredibly positive for the economy. Imagine if we can cut the deficit, turn it into a surplus, reduce regulation, we can have a massive boost for the economy. As a tangent here, I just saw a discussion on YouTube about Musk being involved in deregulation and how that is supposedly a conflict of interest. Well, yes, I mean, it is a conflict of interest in the sense that that's why Musk is involved, because he's feeling it on his own skin. He's feeling the regulatory bloated state on his own skin, and that's why he's getting involved. But this is not something where he wants to exert power or get himself an ego boost or something. He just has businesses to run, and he sees how the state is directly or sometimes indirectly, but mainly directly trying to inhibit him, trying to actually make it more difficult to do business. And that's not just hurting him, that's hurting everybody else. I think the best way we get this economy back on track is to have the animal spirits full-fledged, going for it, reduce the deficit, and have businesses innovate. This is the strength of the United States. This is how we're going to beat Russia. This is how we're going to beat China. Now back to the book, JM Coetzee, The Pole. It's a story about a pianist, Polish pianist that plays Chopin, which is a Polish composer, and he doesn't really play very well. So he's a mechanic. There's a line in the book where they ask him, "Are you a pianist?" And he said, "Well, I'm a man who plays the piano." The same way there's a man that punches tickets in the bus. So I execute a task. I'm not an artist. I'm an executioner of a task. Now that task in itself might be very laudable, very high art or whatever, but in the end, it's a mechanical task, and this mechanical task is exactly how it comes across when he plays. There's no emotion. There's no humanity in there, and I think the lady that he falls in love with feels that even while he's playing, she feels like yeah, it's an all right performance, but it really doesn't move me. And then brings up the first question, which is really, okay, what is art? What does it mean when art moves you? And there's something between the execution of a piece of art, whether it's music or painting or a book, and then the emotion that you feel. And that gap is what art is. That void that you can, or to paraphrase Philip Roth, I drive a wedge of consciousness between reality and human suffering, and I think that's what art is. A wedge of consciousness, something a little bit different, something inspiring, something interesting, something emotional. We call it emotion because we can't rationalize it. So I'm not going to try to find words for it. And I'm not a very good poet, which is, by the way, part of the book actually, is that if you that's what poetry is, right? Poetry has the ability to express things that our frontal cortex can't fathom. That's what poetry is. And by the way, it comes, I'm going to mention it a bit later because it's part of the book. So back to the story. The pole is a very Beckettian, almost absurd story. Things happen, they shouldn't be happening, but they happen because it's almost like an automaton. Like one thing is put in place, and then something else happens, and then something else happens. And we just keep going until we end up in a place where, we are having an affair, actually, that should never have happened. That should have never happened. So to me, it's interesting. I think there's almost an allegory to the name, the pole. The pole is, of course, the Polish, versa, but it's also the pole in North and South Pole. Like, you're one extreme, and you show me the other extreme. You're the unemotional, inhuman artist, and your existence shows me what art really is all about. So I see this book in that realm, and it's interesting and inspiring from that perspective. So it's about humanity and then art. What is art? Like I said, there's the last part of the book is about poetry and poems that the Pole wrote to his beloved, and she reads it after his death. And they're not very good. Again, the poems are not very good, but she still reads it, and it's almost painful to read the book because you can feel like bad poetry is a really bad thing. Bad poetry is not fun, and it's like, it's like you don't want to read about it, but it just, you push through, and then in the end it's kind of like, okay, fine. So it has that feel. So I think there's this absurdity. That's why it reminds you of Beckett. Like it's almost like a root canal. Like you're fighting yourself through the story, and then eventually you come out at the other end and it's okay. But it's not enjoyable. It's like art that is not enjoyable. I mean, I'm talking about the book now, but has a lot of value and therefore still worthy to read. Something like that. So to summarize JM Coetzee's book, The Pole, it's a short novel or a long short story about a man who falls in love with a woman. The man is inhuman, an automaton. She is the other pole in this relationship, the love, the emotion, and he is the artist, but he's also the anti-artist. He is everything an artist is not, but he still is an artist, and he plays the piano like it shouldn't be played, and he writes poems like it shouldn't be written, but he still does it. And in a certain way, it's like rape. It's like, why are you even doing this? You're not good enough. Stop doing it. So you can almost feel like a bit of resentment against the person. But then on the other hand, you don't root for him, but the resentment kind of fades away a bit. Because in the end, we all have the right to express ourselves. And even the pole, which is a emotionless automaton, has the right to call himself an artist and to perform art. And we have the right to disapprove.